think one of the concerns that a lot of Westerners who come to Nomad Capitalist for help have when it comes to second citizenship is the fear that that second citizenship isn't going to carry the same weight that their current one does. So if you're a U.S. citizen, you fear that becoming Dominican, you're not going to be as respected just using that Dominica passport. And especially so if you ever renounce your U.S. citizenship or your current citizenship and just be Dominican or just be whatever it is. That's a big fear. In this video, I'm going to lay out 4 specific countries that not only perhaps care, but may be an impediment to doing this. Note that the number is only 4 out of 200 plus countries and territories. I'm going to share the 4 that are the most difficult that you want to be aware of. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Henderson, and if you'd like to learn how the Nomad Capitalist team can personally help you get your second citizenship, but also create a holistic plan for going offshore, keeping more of your money, going where you're treated best, as we say, learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. Let me tell you a story of a gentleman who came to me recently who was not from the West, who did not have the blessing of being born with a great travel document that allowed him to go almost everywhere. This is a guy who did very well in business. Starting with what I call a T or C passport. His native country passport, couldn't go to the US, couldn't go to the European Union, couldn't go a lot of places. But he made good money. He started living the nomad capitalist lifestyle, and as he made more money, he went out and got a couple other citizenships that increased his visa-free travel. But he said, when I started talking to him, and we started running through the diagnostics process, he said, Andrew, one of my goals is I want the freedom to travel anywhere in the world I want, except I don't care about the Anglo countries. He says, I lived in New Zealand for a while and it just wasn't for me. He says, I found there to be a lot of rules, just didn't fit in there. He says, you can keep those countries. I said, London? He says, no interest. US? He says, never. New Zealand, don't want to go back, etc. This is a very interesting kind of citizenship planning exercise because it is possible, by and large, to be able to travel pretty much anywhere that you want in the world. Now, there are some countries in Africa that are really not keeping up with the trend of opening up with visa liberalization, and so there may be a few countries, Chad or something, or Central African Republic may be difficult for you to go to. Even then, Africa as a whole is opening up to each other, so you could always get an African passport and you'd probably be covered there. But you want to go to Russia, you want to go to China, you want to go to Europe, you want to go all over Latin America, those are very easily covered with a relatively basic passport portfolio. But the 4 countries that are the most difficult when it comes to citizenship planning, whether it's visiting them or moving there, are what I call the KUNA countries, C-U-N-A, and that stands for Canada, the United States, New Zealand, and Australia. Now you'll notice that my client mentioned Anglo countries. That's the term that we use for English-speaking countries in the developed world. It is the KUNA countries plus the UK and Ireland. That makes up, I suppose, the Anglosphere. However, visa-free travel to the UK and Ireland is relatively straightforward, even with a Caribbean citizenship by investment or a number of other passports. So those 2 are very easily covered from a visa-free travel perspective. Ireland has an investment immigrant program, so if you want to invest money in Ireland in something like a REIT, you can move there. The UK has programs for investors and entrepreneurs as well, recently tightened up, but they still exist. Really, the more difficult countries, if you're going to live life as a global citizen, are Canada, the United States, New Zealand, and Australia. Now let me be clear what I'm saying here. Obviously, if you are a citizen of one of those countries, if you're a citizen of the European Union, if you're a citizen of a country like Japan or Singapore, your passport allows you to visit those countries very easily. What I'm saying is, imagine that you are like my client, and you have a T or C passport, and then you go out and you acquire a T or B passport. T or B passport, you can go to Europe and to most places in the world, Singapore, Hong Kong, etc., but you're still missing the United States. You're still missing Australia in most cases, okay? Or imagine that you're someone like in my position where you start out with a T or A passport and you eventually get rid of that passport, okay? I have talked before. If I want to go to Canada, I need to go and ask for a visa. If I want to go to Australia or New Zealand, I need to go and get a visa. Now, I went through the visa process in New Zealand once. I eventually had to withdraw my application because they wanted me to send my passport to them for 2 months. It just wasn't feasible. But the process was straightforward. They were very pleasant. So the idea of getting a visa, I've said numerous times before, this is not the end of the world. In fact, most visa processes out there are not very difficult. These KUNA countries, they are a bit more difficult. They are a bit more involved. You may need to send your passport somewhere for a substantial period of time. You may need to actually, go into the embassy and go through a whole process. Most visas are not difficult. These are. So I don't want you to be upset by the idea of visas, but if you are the Western citizen, like myself, and you're used to just being able to go wherever you want, I ask people who are Westerners, again, in my diagnostics process, have you ever been rejected for a visa? Because that can be important sometimes. And most of them say, I've never even applied for a visa, right? So if you're in that camp, the idea of not being able to go to those 4 countries may be a bit of a letdown. I can tell you, I've had this status of needing to get a Canadian tourist visa for a couple of years now. Haven't had the urge to go to Canada. I've been to Canada many times. I like Canada. I like the Canadian people. I think it's a beautiful place. It's just not really on my radar. And the reason is there are so many other places to go. On the other hand, if you are the Tier C passport holder, I think oftentimes, people who grow up in these emerging countries, their goal is, United States, for example. I told you about the guy who came to my house here on Easter from Nicaragua. He said, we have a terrible passport. I said, no, you've got a great passport. You just can't go to the one country that everyone in your country wants to go to, and that's the United States. Therefore, you call it terrible. I'll gladly take a Nicaraguan passport. So understand this, okay? Those are 4 countries that are going to be difficult. If you need to get a visa to go to the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, that's important. Now, what we have done for some folks who have renounced their US citizenship is we've gone through and found ancestry in Canada or the UK or New Zealand or Austria. We've got Portugal going on right now, and others. And so if you get that, then there's your TRA replacement passport. You always want to find out which passports you're eligible for. But let's just say that you aren't fortunate enough to qualify for that. And you want to be a nomad capitalist. Whether you're giving up a good passport or whether you never had one to begin with, my perspective is very simple. The world is wide open. Not going to Canada or Australia or New Zealand is not the end of the world. I spent the majority of my life in the United States. I've had enough of the United States, and it'd be nice to go back, and maybe I'll do that at some point if they'll let me. I think I can live without it. I'm here in Malaysia, I'm in Montenegro, I'm in Georgia, I'm in Colombia, I'm in Mexico. And here's the hidden secret that no one wants to talk about that I actually made a video about. None of these countries care where you're from. I remember going and meeting with an ambassador from a country because I was going and going through a visa process, very simple visa process, very nice guy. And he said, oh, you've made things more difficult on yourself by not being a U.S. citizen because you wouldn't need a visa and now you do. I said, yeah, not very difficult. We had the most beautiful chat, right? And he doesn't care. He actually said, it's not my business which passport you have. There's literally been times in the past when I did have a U.S. passport and I went and got a visa just to go through the process on a lesser passport just for the sake of doing it and learning and seeing it. Nobody ever cares. You're born in the U.S., U.S. citizen? Yeah. Or no. Okay, whatever. Nobody cares. The KUNA countries, I think, probably do care a little bit. And so what I want you to analyze is, how important are those KUNA countries for you in your nomad capitalist journey? Okay. When it comes to, again, renouncing a TRA passport, or when it comes to getting new passports to bring yourself up from lower passports, to me, that's the most important question. Getting a visa to go to Dubai is not difficult at all. They don't bother you. They don't care. Getting a visa to go to most countries. I can tell you, I have visa-free access to most places. I go there, never really get bothered. Occasionally, you'll see someone in the comments section or someone I'm working with will tell me, oh, I get a little bit harassed somewhere. Half the time, it's just those of us from the West have never been asked so much as a question going to most countries. And so being asked, hey, what's your business here? What are you doing? Et cetera, for 60 seconds kind of throws us off guard. Those are the 4 countries, CUNA, Canada, United States, New Zealand, Australia. those are going to be the ones that are most difficult to handle. Again, if you want to go out and buy a Malta citizenship by investment, perhaps soon, Cyprus citizenship by investment, they may be finally getting visa-free access to the United States as I record this. That's a discussion point. You may be lucky enough to have an ancestor from a visa waiver program country or a Tier A passport country. And so if you want to do one of those things, then you're covered. There are actually even a couple fast-track naturalization programs that have come and gone over the years in Tier A countries. So there are ways to do that and to keep your access to KUNA. But if you're trying to keep things economical, for most nomad capitalists, those are the 4 countries that you're going to have the most problems with in a renunciation situation, or if you have a lesser passport to start with. Ask yourself, how important are those 4 countries? And if you're like me and you're from the United States, you're from a Western country, ask yourself, are they really important? I have friends who, they just like the idea of having the option. It's almost an ego thing for some of these people where, I need access to Canada. What would I do without access to Canada? I literally had a friend of mine, when I no longer became US, he said, do you know you just gave up the only passport that has visa-free access to Equatorial Guinea? With a straight face. Who cares? No one's going to Equatorial Guinea, right? So you're gonna decide on a U.S. passport versus that. But on a more serious note, do you go to Canada? Do you go to Australia? Do you go to New Zealand? If you do, then you want to govern your strategy accordingly. If you don't, ask yourself, is having every single option in the world not living the ideal life that you want and not going where you're treated best? How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.